Okay, so welcome to the next session of SUP conference. We'll start with a talk by Enno Meijers about standards, a topic I also like a lot. And yeah, standards and cultural heritage institutions. The stage is yours, Enno.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, welcome everybody. Nice to be at this conference again. My name is Enno Meijers. I work for the Dutch Digital Heritage Network in the Netherlands, and I'll be telling in this talk about the work we have done basically in the past 10 years, and it has a lot to do with standards, and it also had a lot to do with patience in order to achieve some form of standardization, and I will take you on a tour about our experiences. And actually, it's a kind of an update on a talk I did earlier at SWIP in 2017, 8 years ago, when we just started our work at the Digital Heritage Network. And in that talk, I showed the vision we had in order to build a distributed network of heritage information, as we called it then. And it's a pleasure to be back again and tell you more about the work we did in the past 8 years. I'll start with telling you a little bit more about what we aimed for and what we are still aiming for, where we are now. So what did we actually do in the past 10 years? What our plans are next, and especially what did we learn over the past 10 years. So what do we aim for? The Dutch Digital Heritage Network is not an organization. It's a cooperation of heritage institutions in the Netherlands. And the basic idea is that all the information that is, of course, in physical collections is being digitized and made publicly available in a lot of different projects. But as we draw the conclusion 10 years ago that a lot of that work was really hard to find by users, especially if you don't know the structure of all the different groups we have within the network, all the different type of organizations, all the different projects, and this is just a slide that gives an impression of the broadness of the network, including also the research, like the digital humanities work that's being done. So what we try to do is think back, looking from a user perspective, and think how can we enable users to find all the information in an easier way, and especially find all the relevant pieces, find them in the right context. So for that, there was an initiative for a national strategy for digital heritage, and that is the aim of the national strategy is to make digital heritage information more accessible to everyone, enabling people and communities to experience heritage in the ways that suit them best. So it's really thinking from the user perspective. Recently, we launched our third version of the national strategy, and it's issued actually together with the Ministry of Culture, Education and Science in the Netherlands. So the goals for the network is to make heritage information widely usable, built on a sustainable approach from the source. We think sources are the first-class citizens, up to the end-user applications, and in a very dynamic understanding of heritage. So heritage is not solely defined by the objects in the collection, but heritage is what people experience as being important for the history. And we do that. We regard our work as building a data space for cultural heritage, including the whole Kingdom of the Netherlands, so including also the users and institutes in the Caribbean part of the kingdom. And we have a number of key principles. So think from the anticipating from reuse. So and we think backwards, starting at the use of information. And we're building a network, and in the network, all parts of the network, every organization has a certain role to play, and we try to fit organizations to have them, to enable them to play the role that fits them best. And a lot of the work, and the central part of the work, is about agreements on how to do things and what standards to use. And I'll come back to that a little bit more. And we really try to avoid centralized solutions. So we try to build thinking from a decentralized approach. So what we actually do so far? For one thing, when we started 10 years ago, it was clear that we needed some kind of framework to think about the whole context of heritage information, overarching all the different domains. And that's why we started the digital heritage reference architecture. We started really by defining a number of principles that led to operational goals and strategic goals. And nowadays, we developed the reference architecture into quite an extensive document, which is actually an online document or a wiki environment, where we describe requirements, functionality in a detailed way, and we have meetings every month in order to bring this work further. A major part of the work we did with all the heritage institutions is implementing linked data standards, and we defined requirements for all the collection management systems in the network, and we brought them back to 5 main requirements, and I've listed them here. So it's about publishing data using a persist identifier, and different choices can be made there, but it should be persistent, and there should be a policy supporting that, which is of course not always the case, and for many organizations not an easy thing to do. Publication of linked data, so make the data available as linked data. The support for the IIIF image API and presentation API. Have the ability to connect to the network of term servers, which is a central service that we developed, and that gives access to all different terminology sources. I'll come back to that in a minute. And also be able to register data through as a data set in the dataset register, which is also a central service. We require all the systems in the Netherlands to adhere to these requirements. And so far, we've been able to implement this in over 100 institutions already. And this work is still, it's much work in progress still. This is a screenshot of the network of terms. It's a real-time federated querying engine over 49 terminology sources, and it gives the results back through a GraphQL API, which can be implemented in the system. So the screenshot is only the demonstrator for the API, but it uses an harmonized model using SCOS to get back different results. One of the sources in there is also the Homosaurus that was discussed earlier this afternoon as well. So we give access to all relevant sources that can be of use in order to align your data to the shared terminology. Please have a look at the links if you're interested. And the other one is the dataset register. It contains already over 10,000 dataset descriptions. So it's really a register of dataset descriptions, and this is an example of dataset description. It's compliant to DCAT, which is the European DCAT API, I should say, the European standard for describing datasets. And the special thing is that we ask the institution themselves to publish their dataset description, and the register harvests all the different descriptions and builds the register data on a daily basis, actually. So publishing linked data is of course not trivial, so you need to agree on the models in which you publish the data, and in order to support generic visibility of the information, we require the data to at least adhere to a schema.org profile, and we defined an application profile based on schema.org, which is very it's a first introduction to the data that is available, and it can be, of course, enriched by domain models, and we are working with different domains in order to get to define application profiles for the probably familiar models like the CDEC CRM and others, and we try to have an application profile for each of the models for the different domains. We recently started thinking about a linked places application profile in order to also model historical geographical data. So that is a very new undertaking. And earlier there was work done on a model for modeling historical person observation and reconstructions, and that so far, but I'm curious if people have other thoughts, but it looks like we're the first ones to do this in linked data in this way. So please have a look at it and come back to us if there are other interesting, if there's other interesting work done in this area. I mentioned already the DCAT application profile, which we use for describing the datasets. So our dataset register can be queried using DCAT. For the organizations, we also use the schema.org dataset model in order to improve or help the own visibility for the institution that publishes its data description. And finally, I mentioned already, we use COS for harmonizing searches through different terminology sources. You can have a look at docs.nde.nl for our requirements and specifications in this area. A last step, especially from the user perspective or the user side of services, we did quite some work in defining different behavior of users, and we tried to model that in a number of behavior profiles, as we call them, and we're currently developing requirements for functionality and metadata based on these profiles. So each type of usage can be classified belonging to a certain type of profile, behavior profile, and we are thinking of developing requirements for this so we can build more generic applications in order to support used by the profiles. What will we do next? Well, at least we will be busy for a long time implementing all these things, and that is a very important part of the work we are doing. And we have a supporting program for organizations that want to start using the new functionality, I described earlier, and it's often, as you know, migrating to a new version of the system can be painful and needs resources. So we try to support organizations to take this step. But there's also a very large need in thinking about data quality and improving data quality. So we are working on standardization in data entry, in the alignment to terminology sources, either manual or through build process using OpenRefine. And of course, the implementation of the application models I mentioned. So we actually work with in what we call data workshops in all different parts of the country on these topics. We stimulate the work on developing the domain models, the application profiles, and we are working a lot with vendors on out-of-the-box compliant NDE usable systems, and that is slowly moving, and that's probably part of the learning to be patient experience there. But I think we are still moving in the right direction and taking steps. And this is a kind of an overview of our program in several layers. So the bottom layer is really about what is happening in the institutions, and that is the work there is really focusing on the implementation of functionality and improving data quality. In this more centralized layer with the services like the network of terms and dataset register, we are working either on implementation and developing of the functionality, but also thinking about additional services, especially to facilitate the reuse of the information and to make it easier to build applications using, as we call it, connected heritage information that becomes available through the network and in the systems. And in that part, we are now focusing on standardization on that level. So we're thinking about, like I already said, generic ways of presenting information, but also thinking about standardization of connections between the data layer and the presentation layer within these kind of platforms. And we recently published a report on it. Sadly, it's still in Dutch. Maybe the headlines will be in English in the coming month. And that is basically the start of the standardization process on this layer, and I think it's really important because this will demonstrate how important it is, and if you start working on standards and implement standards and build from there, and in the end things will become easier. We regard ourselves as a data space for cultural heritage in the Netherlands, and from that respect, we try to connect to other data spaces like Europeana is building, but also the research infrastructures we have in the Netherlands. So, what did we learn actually? For one thing, people are very important in this whole process. So you can think about technology, but you need people to actually work with the technology and drive the adoption. So that is very important. And similar thing is about the decentralization. So we're not only thinking about decentralized technology, but also a decentralized approach within the organization of the network. So we work with provincial organizations, with larger organizations, supporting the smaller ones. So we have networks of networks, you could say. We try to develop different networks of professional digital heritage coaches, as we call them, data cleaners, working groups, skilled contractors. So they're all different parts of the networks that we try to involve in the work we're doing, and all on different levels are supported by a step-by-step approach. We do a lot of communication events, and last but not least, vendors are strategic partners, and we really try to create movement in the market. And I think we succeeded, at least in some parts of the market. To round up, I think in general, innovation in the cultural heritage domain is tough because the budgets are not very large. There are many priorities, and digital strategy is not always top of mind. They have many other challenges, of course, and we try to come up with support for the organizations in all different ways. And in general, doing linked data is not easy. It's still, I experience it still as a niche area, and there are not many skilled professionals around still, and tools are maturing slowly. They are maturing, but it could be nice if that went quicker. And linked data, of course, creates dependency because you build on things that are on the web, but things on the web are not always persistent, so you have to be careful with doing that. And legacy software and technologies tend to stick around for a long time. So what did we learn and how did we approach it? It was really starting with the brave ones, and then create a coalition of the willing, work on examples and learn from it, and be open and listen, and don't forget the fun. And this is something we still, we have a yearly hackathon that is really the fun part of all this. We have a 2 days hackathon working with linked data and cultural heritage information, and that creates an enormous energy within the network. So thank you for your attention, and you can reach me through any of these channels.
Thank you for the overview. We have 2 questions from the audience. So one about your standardization efforts. Have you in all this year reached out or collaborated with other standards bodies like W33 or others?
Well, we basically try to implement the W33 standards and not actually invent them. And I must say, we are trying to follow things that are happening. We are like with the IIIF community, we have close contact, but also like the ARC Alliance, we're in contact. So we try to reach out where we think it's relevant. I think for the most interesting part is the historical person, the person in context ontology. I think that would be something that really is interesting for a more international approach. But for the others, we just try to implement the international standards, and also stay away from specific cultural heritage takes on that. So applications profiles are fine, but we don't think we should create cultural heritage domain-oriented standards. I think we should stop doing that, actually.
Okay. The second question is, how many people are involved in the standardization at your institution?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to be exact on. Our core team, our core program consists of around 10 people. but they're also working on the network communication and organization or organizing the network itself. So it's not special on standardization. And then on the other hand, we are trying to work with all different organizations that can contribute, and especially like the domain standards. We are not doing that. We are trying to collaborate with specialists within larger organizations like the National Archive and National Library, etc. So it's a difficult question, but we have a core team of around 10 people.
Oh, that sounds good. Okay, so thanks again for this talk.